This is breaking news at 1 o'clock. Howard Zhang, head of BBC Chinese, and Lucy Kikuchi, a relative unknown, are live streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube. The live stream is thought to be part of the Business of Creating podcast. It's the business of creativity. It's creative. It's not creating. And it's not a podcast either. The audience will be joining in with Howard and Lucy, sending thoughts and ideas in the chat section. Thank you and have a very pleasant afternoon. Hi everyone, it's me, it's Lucy. I almost had you there, didn't I? Hello, this is the Business of Creativity. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Yes, it's 2022. I'm back for more. Thank you for joining us here on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you're new to the Business of Creativity, it's a relaxed space for content marketers and creative professionals to chew the fat on working creatively on their creative projects and their creative experiences. If you're interested in being a future guest on the show, don't be shy. Send me a message, say hi, and let's come up with a topic surrounding creative work. Before we get started today, just a quick shout out to my creative friend, John McRae, for lending me some brainstorming time this week for today's show. I said I'd give him a shout out in exchange for that time. So if you're a fan of books, of literature, check out his passion project, talesfromabsurdia.com, for interviews with authors and some great book reviews. Okay, but without further ado, start introducing yourself in the chat section, say hello, start sending in some questions. I'll try to pick some out as we go along. And let's meet Chief Editor and Head of BBC Chinese, Howard Zhang, who will speak to us today about engaging the female demographic in broadcast media and representing females, the female audience. So here we go. Hopefully he's still there and he hasn't run away. Hi, Howard Zhang. Ni hao, ni hao ma.
Ni hao, ni hao. Haven't run away, but I have to put in a disclaimer. Okay, I'm here
Yes.
on my lunch hour as an individual. I'm not representing the BBC, but as
Yes.
a content producer, I do find the topic, highly interesting because it's part of our everyday work.
Yes.
Half the population is women, and often, especially in the news industry, we don't reach enough of them. That's just a
Right.
fact. That's
Yeah.
the reason I really, really want to come here, and I don't pretend for a second to be an expert or authority on this subject, because just before the show we had a little browse over some of the data. You can see most of
Yeah.
our generalized intuitions and
Yes. Yeah.
are just not true, and
Yeah.
and audience is so diverse. It's so
Yeah.
difficult to pin down the type of story, the type of content that will actually be for what type of women. And these are
Yeah.
not something I pretend to know the truth behind it. All I can say
Yeah.
is I'll share some of the things that day to day through our conversation,
Yeah.
that way we
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
through, and maybe other people have other insights that we can all
Yeah.
share. This is the purpose. I think it would be interesting.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is a format where, we can take questions and ideas from the audience. I know we will have maybe some people from the corporate world in diversity and inclusion who, maybe they've got some ideas, people from marketing who are trying to target a female demographic, and they've also got ideas of what maybe what works and could be transferred to the world of broadcasting. So we'll see what they come up with. We've got people coming in from Germany. We've got Richard, hi, konnichiwa, from Tokyo, Japan. Ni hao ma from Manabe-san. So, and Rhiannon again, thank you for joining us, guys. But yes, it's true, isn't it? It's must be a huge task. And I think just to start off with, maybe today, the people that have joined us, just as a general intro, you're the chief editor, head of BBC Chinese. So just give us a quick flavor of what your day to day is like.
Day to day, essentially, we have two at this moment, two operations. One is in Hong Kong still, and
Mhm.
another in London. And then we
Yeah.
have stringers and sort of reporters in a few different places in the world.
Yeah.
So because we're relatively small group team, and compared to the bigger BBC, we're
Mm.
a small branch of under news, international news. So
Mm.
but daily still, you have to be able to put up enough good stories
Yeah.
on the various platforms besides the website. We also have
Mm.
YouTube and
Mhm.
Facebook, Instagram, all the
Mhm.
usual suspects, and you have to determine based on data what type of stories people are following
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
what added value can we do,
Yeah.
because we as an international broadcaster, that's an added challenge, because
Mhm.
in most of your local markets they already have their local content providers, especially in
Yeah.
news,
Yeah.
and there's no way we'll be the first port of call in
Yeah.
any of those markets, be it
Yeah.
China still got a block kind of
Yeah.
on most international news side, but
Mhm.
China, Taiwan,
Mhm.
be it in Australia,
Yeah.
Southeast Asia, anywhere, they all have their go-to,
Yep. Yep.
whether it's Chinese or English news
Mm.
suppliers already. And
Mhm.
so why are people coming to you?
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's daily the biggest struggle question we
Yeah.
ask ourselves. And
Competing with the local, that it's the local competition. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
often we always, again, thanks to data, you find the ones that people do tune into you are the
Mhm.
either the really, really big major international breaking stories,
Yes.
and somehow boom, people just, whether it's a shooting in the US, the
Yeah.
burning of Notre Dame, and
Yeah.
there's some type of outbreak of pandemic somewhere, like
Mhm.
those type of big stories, you
Yeah.
tend to have this spike.
Mhm.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden millions and
Mm.
millions of people are coming, and
Mhm.
but the moment when those big crises go away,
Mhm.
the audience
Uh,
tend
it
to
just drops off. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
just and then occasionally you have to then follow the trends, and for
Mhm.
example, if there's a trending story in Taiwan uh,
Mhm.
over the past month, there was this one Netflix hit, Light the Night, this
Mhm.
show that was
Okay.
really trending in Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Okay. Mm.
And it's about a Japanese style nightclub, and back in the 80s run in
Mhm.
Taiwan, and the love triangles, the murder mysteries, that
Ooh.
type of TV series. And
Okay.
all of a sudden it became topical on the
Okay.
news front.
Mm. Mhm.
And so is there any story you can do, not about the show, but about
Yeah.
some of the
Topics.
topics, the show that
Yes.
brings up
Yeah.
in society,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, if you do a
Yeah.
story on that, you will realize, okay, quite a few people now, because another biggest
Mm.
sort of weapon for us now, or not only weapon, it's the main kind of a channel for audience, is
Mhm.
search,
Right.
because people
Okay.
don't come to you by default as
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
protocol. They would
Mhm.
be searching for something,
Yeah.
and then
I
they
have to
find you
yeah.
there.
I have to tell you actually, Howard, I have a question for you. See if you can
Hmm.
answer this question. So, in Google search, I put the keyword female representation. I'm going to give you one guess as to which organization came top ranking in Google.
BBC, no.
Ah, yes. It was BBC Bite Size, actually. It was
Yeah.
BBC Bite Size, the GCSE kind of the place where the kids can do the GCSE revision. So yes, I was surprised, and it was interesting because you're with that younger demographic, and you're coming up first in with that keyword. So I thought, oh, the SEO guys at the BBC have got their they're doing the
Yeah.
right thing there, aren't they?
Well, even when we say there's no stereotyping, but data after data, there are a couple of genres of fields. One is education, the other is health.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those are the type of general story groups tend to
Hmm.
have more women audience,
Hmm.
tend to attract more women audience
Mm.
vis-a-vis men for one reason or another. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, individual stories. I don't want to be individual stories all different depending on
Mm.
the headline, depending on the picture you put on,
Yeah,
depending
yeah, yeah.
on the content inside. You just
Mm-hmm.
don't know, and
Yeah.
any of those different elements can
Mm.
impact on the readership. Shall I go in and share a couple of today's data
Oh, yes.
examples just to give
Very
people a
exciting.
set
Yeah.
set the scene a bit? So we okay.
Yeah, a little bit
Let
of
me share.
behind the scenes of the BBC. Let's
Okay,
see if we can share
if it
this.
works, okay.
Yeah. So here we go. We should be able to add this here. Oopsie.
Does it
No, I'm
work?
going to just there we go. Yep.
Okay,
We've got it.
all right.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is our kind of in-house
This is fascinating. This is
data
real
kind of. So, for
behind the
example, let's
scenes.
just randomly pick. Okay,
Yeah,
COVID
yeah.
top story. Johnson expected to ease England's Plan B measure. This is
Okay, yep.
essentially a
Hmm.
sort of update me informational piece. There's not
Okay.
much,
Hmm.
the picture is just the
Yeah.
empty London subway tube underground,
Yeah.
and most people just quickly read it, 30 seconds. But let's look at the demographics.
Yeah. Oh wow, look at this. Look at this
So,
data.
really young people, sort of
Not
average. They're not
yeah.
that bothered, but it's more
Yeah.
working age people,
Okay.
and a lot of them are reading between 25 and 55.
Yeah.
Men, women, half half. The really older
Okay.
people, because they're not impacted,
Mm.
they don't care. So
Yeah.
that picture
Okay.
shows you,
Mhm.
for that type of story, a general
Yeah.
kind of announcement type of story,
Mhm.
and only people who are, somehow the story is relevant to them, they read
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
And let's go for people tend to say, if you have a personality, if you have
Mhm.
a people story, tend to
Mhm.
attract more women
Yeah.
stories, women audience.
Yeah.
I remember there was a story about Joe Biden's profile. Joe
Oh,
Biden,
Joe Biden, he's
one
there.
year
Yeah.
on, how's he doing?
How's he doing? Let's have a look how Joe Biden is doing with the audience. Okay.
See,
So the young
again,
people, yeah.
really young, or
Yeah.
senior,
I don't yeah.
and mainly
Yeah, that's
mainly
the one.
men, and the
Yeah.
middle people don't
Oh,
care,
don't
and
care.
women really don't care.
Okay, that is very interesting.
And
That is
another
very
story, this is
interesting.
more like a light-hearted, well, not light-hearted, but Hong Kong is calling hamsters because the officials are
Yeah,
blaming
yeah.
them for spreading COVID. And
Mhm.
let's look at everybody's
Oh,
interested.
wow. Right
Everybody's
across the
interested,
board.
and they're all reading
That
it.
is interesting. Is that I don't know, is there something about animals that everybody gets on board? Everybody
Yeah.
gets on board with stories about animals. You on social media, you post something cute with an animal in. It's across the board. I think they seem to go down well. But oh, I just got a question from Richard in Tokyo. Are those domestic UK data? So yes, we're looking at
Yeah,
that was the UK.
it's only daily, so today's data, like
That's today's
yeah,
UK news. Yeah. And
yeah.
I before we went live, actually, I have to say that we looked at Love Island, the data for Love Island.
Mhm.
Very interesting. The women were not interested, the men were.
And young men.
Young
So
men.
so Love Island,
Fascinating.
yes,
Yeah.
there are lots of women inside, but
Mhm.
only young men really interested for one reason or another. That's
Yes.
really data provides us with those insights. So a
Yeah.
lots of
Mhm.
that's one of the things, we started by saying this. Never stereotype, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
I
It's
just
true,
don't know.
isn't it?
And
Yeah. It's true.
maybe we were saying, if you are a particular marketer to a particular product, or a group
Mm.
of product in a particular country,
Yeah.
after a series of surveys, you may be able to come to a conclusion for this
Yes.
type of product,
Mhm.
for this age group,
Mhm.
and this socioeconomic group of
Mhm.
women, we
Mm.
may be able to attract more of them.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing you may be able to get. But for news,
Yeah.
essentially international news, we are really faced with challenges.
Yes, yes, and let's be honest, it's not easy for the BBC. I mean, you know, in a few years' time, we've also seen the news about the license fee going. So you have to kind of nail these things. Don't, like marketers, you have to know who your audience is, where they are, what they're interested in, and you have to nail it. Otherwise, interest drops away. So you've just got to be on top of this. But I remember in the beginning, Howard, we were talking about the fact that you said for a lot of let's say heavier news topics, what you found was it tends to be this middle-aged male
Yeah,
audience,
yeah.
and that you don't really seem to be able to get the same sort of level of female engagement. And we were sort of thinking about why that would be. But it's obviously a question that sort of concerns you or puzzles you.
Hmm.
But let's sort of take it back. Like, why is it important to question, where are all the females? Like, why are you looking to sort of pull up this demographic in
Uh,
your
well,
viewers?
it's just been okay. One of the main reasons for that is legacy, because for a long time, I guess globally, not just the UK or US or Japan, is globally post
Mm-hmm,
the Industrial Revolution.
mm-hmm,
It's been sort of male going out to work, female
mm,
staying at home. There's been a
yeah,
division of labor for so long.
yeah,
Only after World War II,
mm-hmm,
after so many people, male population
mm-hmm,
perished,
mm-hmm,
did governments all around the world start to get women into the workforce, and
yeah,
women start to develop a new type of social status, and
mm-hmm,
this equality drive and lots of things start to come
mm,
to the front.
yeah,
Because of that, now women are in the mainstay of affair in everywhere, most
mm,
developed countries, I would say.
mm,
So for us
mm-hmm,
as a public broadcaster, or as
mm-hmm,
anyone, to reach
mm-hmm,
all of your audience,
yeah,
it's something you must do.
mm-hmm,
You cannot
yeah,
say because just because who we are, we just have to throw these things out. And if it
mm,
just so happened only 35 to 55 male care about what we do, then so be it. You can't do that.
mm-hmm,
You have to
mm.
figure out why others are not engaging with you and not consuming your
Yes.
content. So that's the reason why we're doing this, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know you don't want to speak too much sort of specifically about the BBC today, so we
No,
don't
I
have to
can
follow.
talk about the idea behind why we need to do, and also,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, whether I don't want to go into the license fee bit, but
Okay.
whatever the model in future, is now
Hmm.
you still have to serve all public, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're public broadcaster,
Hmm.
and that goes back into women counts for 50% of the workforce, counts for 50% of society.
Hmm.
That's why there's been this. Actually started by the BBC, an
Mm.
initiative a few years back called the 50/50 Project.
Yes. Yeah.
Essentially, in a nutshell, is trying to get more women
Hmm.
presenters,
Hmm.
interviewees,
Hmm.
and stories about women on air. So
Hmm.
eventually, we can, in different categories, achieve a balance.
Yeah.
Because generally, if you just by sampling, turn on television, whether it's
Hmm.
linear or go to any of the streaming services,
Hmm.
what you'll find is often you see more male faces or male
Yeah.
stories or male,
Yeah.
and oriented content, and that's
Mm.
just a today's fact. So
Yeah.
it's at least it's an attempt
Hmm.
trying to make sure, and it's
Hmm.
not it's it's making its way through the BBC, and lots of other organizations around the
Mm.
world are actually
Yeah.
following suit. And
Mm.
so the data now, slowly, you can see some change already in some areas. I'm not saying
Yeah.
everywhere, but
Hmm.
maybe it's a good attempt, at least trying to address the issue.
Yeah. I mean, I read about the 50/50 project. I understand that Ross Atkins from Outside Source was kind of spearheading this, has been
Hmm.
spearheading this. And by all accounts, it sounds like he's been very successful in sort of, building up this kind of female representation sort of quite quickly, and able to sort of help other sort of departments and teams sort of build a kind of framework for doing this. So,
Mhm.
kudos for him for doing that. I mean, it must be very difficult as a guy who is the editor, the top editor, who's a guy. But by all accounts, it is going very well. I mean, I've sort of been reading around the topic. I know I read some information from, I think it was unwomen.org, the UN site. And they had written an article in not so long ago. I've got it here with me. I think it was February 2021. And it said that when it comes to equality of men and women in news media, progress has virtually ground to a halt. And it says only 4% of traditional news and digital news stories clearly challenge gender stereotypes. So, and obviously they're talking about sort of global, this is not about the BBC, this is about global sort of news media. But this is fairly recent, and sort of it's quite a sort of damning, a damning report on the state of news media. But do you feel that maybe even since this was published, that actually there is a lot of progress in this area?
But just to put things into perspective again, the UK is doing a lot better in terms of media representation, women, compared to many even European countries, and and the West in general is doing a lot better than countries in, for example, Asia. I don't want to name country names, but in certain countries in South Asia, if you look at their female representation on their kind of news side, it's virtually nil.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you turn on certain television channels, or you just flip through them, for whether it's India, Pakistan, in some countries, virtually it's
Yeah.
all bunch of middle-aged old men talking,
Yeah.
and no one else,
Yes. Yeah.
and all talk about things they care.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in that sense,
Mm.
well, I'm not saying we're perfect, but at least we have
Mhm.
come a long way
Yes. Yeah.
from that. But
Yeah.
of course, it's one of the key things. I'm not sure if some of the research you've read, like at
Mm.
least I think it was from Reuters Institute, one of the
Mhm.
research last year, remember,
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
talking again, was time pressure on today's women. That's one of the reasons why
Mhm.
they tend to engage less with sort of news.
Time
Apparently, that
pressure.
that time pressure, because
Okay.
because it's wrong to say women are not interested in politics or this and that,
Mm.
but a typical uh, female audience
Mhm.
from the age of, let's say, 25 to
Mhm.
45,
Mm.
their days, besides office work or shift
Mm.
work, possibly also involve more than men,
Mm.
childcare and other things.
Yeah, I would
So
say
by
so.
the end of the day, if you look
Mhm.
through their daily schedule, what and when
Yeah,
can they actually have time to engage with news?
it's
That was
true.
actually a big question raised, and possibly that's an explanation why on some social media platforms,
Yeah.
such as Facebook or Instagram,
Mhm.
and at certain hours of the day,
Mhm.
you have a lot more female interaction and engagement with content on those
Okay.
platforms. So
Yep.
that's
Okay.
a consideration, I guess, for content providers. We have to take
Right.
into
Mhm.
consideration as well. So if they
Yeah.
are online on their mobile phone
Mm.
after their local time, let's say 9 or 10 o'clock, when the kids are in bed and
Yeah.
everything, and they start to share with their friends and family things, and
Mm.
that that's the time then you perhaps should think about creating or making something available for them that they would like
Yes.
to consume, and that it's
Yes.
another way of trying to get more And
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, like, time pressure aspect, because yes, women, of course, are interested in all the political news, the big stories, but yes, maybe timing is kind of part of that. And this idea of, because the women are at home looking at after the kids, well, it's true, because people talk about male female equality, and you hear a lot of people talking about allowing women to have the same opportunities, allowing women to sort of progress up the ladder, promotions, and same pay and all of this kind of thing. And that's great, and of course that's what we want. But the reality is that you can give women these opportunities, but at the same time they are still the ones who are predominantly responsible for the children, childcare. And so what they're actually doing is we're racing to sort of, or we're pushing ourselves to sort of further and further ourselves to achieve higher and higher, more things. What we're actually doing is we're taking on everything, and we're juggling it all. We're trying to sort of juggle it all, and it just ends up with a lot of stress. So I always think in this conversation about equality between men and women, it's not just a conversation about what opportunities can we also give to women. It's about how can men change their lifestyles in a way that would support women. And one of those things I know, but one of those things would be
I just
things
saw
like
Richard's comment, and ouch.
that. But it's
Yeah.
true, isn't it? It's true. Like if like things like paternity leave, extended paternity leave, and let's have a look at why is it always, or why is it often that the female leaves her job to look after the baby, and
Hmm.
it's the man that stays in his position. It's because the man most frequently probably earns more than the woman. And so, like, any conversation about sort of male female equality, I think has to be a conversation about what men can change and
Mm.
how they can adapt.
That's a much bigger topic.
That's a bit, yeah.
I think we're only talking about how to create, as a content creator, create
Yes,
contents, and how
yes,
to reach
yeah,
out to more.
yeah.
And the other thing, I think some I guess what's different. I'm just looking at some of the questions, and the other thing I can think of in my daily work uh, is that the story type of stories you do, and
Hmm.
the format, the treatment, and then the headlines sometimes do have an impact on whether
Right.
when they search, for example, if
Hmm.
they are into a topic. And oh, there's another research finding I found fascinating. I think it was also from Reuters Institute, was that women tend to obtain their news stories more from word of mouth. It's more when they're
Hmm.
sharing on social media platforms,
Okay.
and it's more from trusted sources. For example, is their brother or sister or
Hmm.
someone in the
Mm.
family, their sons and daughters or parents, said, "Oh,
Hmm.
have you heard of this today?" And
Mm.
somebody shares something on the platform. Then they will, if they're interested, they'll go investigate more. That tend
Mm.
to be another kind of a way of getting news for really busy women of certain age group. And
Mm.
I'm just thinking, because of that, then how you treat your story is perhaps
Mm.
more important when they have only that few seconds,
Hmm.
because the rule of thumb is in the industries, if people look at your headline for 7 seconds
Uh-huh.
and your top picture, they will make the decision whether they will
Yeah.
devote more time on it. After
Yeah.
that, if you lost them, you lost them,
Yeah.
and they just won't come
Yeah.
in. And
Yes. Yeah.
so, what you mentioned of getting more women's faces
Yeah.
online, it is one thing. At least you can identify that's rather than a bearded old man being there.
Hmm.
Possibly
Yeah.
something you can. That's more subconscious type of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just sorry, I'm just looking at some questions that are coming in. Um, do you think it's an either or approach? People spend their time either on social media or on the news. I
Mm,
think I imagine people switch very quickly between the two. Maybe like if in terms of digital news, like people
it,
are kind of switching between the website, the social media, backwards and forwards. Maybe.
it's all about like a click second decision making. People
Yeah.
are on so many platforms at the same time. You know
Yes.
how
Yeah.
frequently nowadays in the developed world you see a person with, you know, one mobile phone, one iPad, a TV at the
Yeah.
front, and this and the radio in the background. It's all
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
so for that, imagine you're whether a man or woman in that
Mm-hmm.
situation,
Mm.
and your decision at your hour of freedom, of
Mm-hmm.
relaxation, trying to engage with piece of content.
Mm.
There's so many distractions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's you only devote your time when you feel it's worth your while, it's relevant to you.
Yeah.
And that, I
Yeah.
think that's the key. So could be
Mm.
they saw something first on social and they engaged with it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then whether it's a link or just a tidbit of something, and
Yeah.
later on, if they really, really are interested in the content, in the subject, they will move
Mm.
to a website possibly to search and find out more.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or go on to YouTube and wait for a visual explainer of something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the process. But so
Mm.
it again depends on the energy, the amount of thinking you devote into a content, and how much you do on it.
Yeah. Sort of going back to this idea of sort of who we see
Mhm,
on a screen, who's representing this like news story. Because I remember last week when we sort of had a quick call about all of this, and you had talked about that you or your team had been out to Wuhan in China, and that you were looking for these female experts
mhm.
because that's one of the big things. It's you know teams sourcing kind of the female experts to speak on these topics. Could you just
Mhm.
sort of talk about that a little bit?
Oh, it would not directly to Wuhan, because by the time things happen, where we were
Mm,
calling, trying to get, and I do find, you know, even when people were willing to talk,
mm,
it's likely to be men who's willing to talk, and
right.
women experts, they may have the expertise, but
Yeah.
there is a reluctance. Uh, again, I hate generalizing, but
Hmm.
it's the general feeling. If you have
Yeah.
a male expert and a female, the male expert is more likely to say yes and
Hmm.
either come on to air, radio, or to be videoed, and the women, some of the, you know, just in private, sometimes ask why, just don't want the trouble,
Uh-huh.
because for a man to come on air, people will criticize his what he says,
Hmm.
his ideas.
Mm,
But for a woman to come on air, besides
hmm.
the ideas, people criticize how she looks, what type of
Yes.
things she's wearing,
Yeah.
and other things.
Mm,
So there's
yeah.
always that reluctance. Should I
Mm,
subject myself to that? And
yeah.
there's that bit, you know, whether
Yeah.
that's everywhere in every country, I don't know. But in some of the places I've been to, that's been the case.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Yes, I can imagine. Like maybe that the sort of the male sort of experts. Yeah, there's just sort of maybe more confidence to come onto air. Yeah, and yeah, it's a shame. It's the shame that sort of
Or what
women.
you said, the
Mhm,
society's general expectation,
mhm,
women are different from men still,
mm,
because
yeah.
when you read those audience comment when you have a
Mhm,
female expert on air,
mm,
yes, they're not just criticizing her argument, they are
mhm,
criticizing lots of other things,
yeah.
which rarely happen to the men.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so that is a you know, intimidation kind of a factor. Of course,
Yeah.
we you know, if we had the manpower, lots of places we're trying to, you know, filter some of the comments, but sometimes you just don't have the manpower to filter. You just said okay, unless it's obscenity, which is all programmed in, you can
Mm,
take out the swearing words and things. But the
mhm,
general comments,
Yeah.
then you really have to have people to sift through that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a terrible shame, but I mean, yes, more women need to be seen sort of as experts and representing these topics so that it just sort of normalizes it, so that women are, it's just totally sort of acceptable, and it's normal for like women to appear as an expert on the news. And like we said before, I think in the UK on the BBC, you can see that there always seems to be this fair representation. I know John in the comment section was saying that especially in the sports industry, he watches a lot of
Hmm.
sports. It says one area I think the BBC in the UK has definitely improved in terms of female representation is in sports punditry, especially football. Um,
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
it's going well. But yes, as you know, you're looking at different markets. You're looking at the Chinese speaking audience, which could be based sort of all over the world. So it's certainly a different situation in different countries.
Yeah. The subject we talked about of being sort of online abuse, for us it's even more relevant,
Mhm.
because depending on the story, especially when it comes to a political story,
Mm.
and often we get some call the 50 Cent Army, or the little pinkies, essentially are sort of a some say patriotic or pro government people coming online,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
they just freely shares their abusive languages online, and it's like a
Yeah.
tidal wave. And that,
Yeah.
I think, for I'm not saying men are more resistant to that, but for
Hmm.
a women expert, they will
Hmm.
really think twice. Do they want to go through all that? And then
Yeah.
so that is a real issue like we encounter at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. But within your own team, I mean, do you feel that in this area, sort of building up sort of female representation, and
Mhm.
do you feel like this is going well in your own team?
I think we're making sort of forward strides, and for example, we have more and more each time when we
Hmm.
recruit, we tend to go out to places and really look at all the candidates and make sure we tried our best to, if in one area we have less women producers, for example, we'll always try
Mm,
to see if we can find a quality candidate,
mm,
and also, in well, we don't have a TV show, so we don't have presenters. But I'm just thinking in future, if there's that type of possibility, you do need. I know it's only one person, but to have faces you're familiar with, you feel, at least some type of identification. It's really important,
mm,
and Hollywood's caught on to this. If they want to
mm.
market to China, they will get at least a number of male or female actors
Yeah.
of some type of a Chinese relation to
Mm,
be on screen. And if they want to market this TV or this to Japan, they will get a Japanese actor actresses. And if they
yeah.
want to attract more African American audience, they will have
Mm,
the African kind of
mm,
heroes,
mm-hmm,
and all those are the more intuitive type of things we need to do almost to get people on board.
mm. Yeah, it is a very big task. And so, I mean, we've talked about sort of in the UK, so feel it's quite positive. I mean, what in China, what do you feel? Is it, I imagine it's even more kind of difficult, this question of sort of female representatives or experts.
I think in
May-
marketing in
mm,
general, retail, and in the commercial sector,
mm,
in the selling and buying things, possibly people are
mm-hmm,
talking about it. But in media, in mainland China, forget about it. There's only one voice, and
yeah,
you can only have that one voice. And
mm,
I'm not saying they do not have. If you go onto the Chinese central television, they
mm-hmm,
often have. pretty young female presenters.
Yeah.
But depending on what they say,
Mhm.
are they there for women's equality or stand? No,
Mm.
I don't think so. So
Mm.
but again, that's my personal opinion. I'm just
Mm.
saying the there is to make sure every program looks decent and they
Mhm.
deliver certain message the government want them to deliver. That's the job.
Mm. Yeah.
So whether the if you look at their news program,
Mhm.
I would have to say a few times when I traveled,
Mhm.
for work purposes, I do force myself to watch, but it was a painful.
Mm.
It's the
Right.
same formula day in and day out. It starts
Mhm.
with about 30 minutes of making announcement of which government leader appeared where and met
Mm.
whom and shook
Mhm.
hands, and that went on and on and on.
Mm.
Yes, presented by a young female presenter. So what? It's still the
Mm.
same content. It just
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, well, I mean, yeah, hopefully we can be relatively positive um, about sort of here in the UK. I mean, and as we said, it's all about. I mean, you take an audience, but they're all so different. I mean, we talk about a female audience, but then, a middle-aged female audience and like Generation Z. The
absolutely,
young
yeah.
the young female audience. I mean, how do you engage them? So, and of course, as you want these people to sort of um you know we are I was brought up with sort of the BBC, but the Generation Z, I mean, they've got everything now. They've got YouTube, they've got Netflix, so
TikTok.
it's TikTok.
TikTok has
Yeah.
overtaken Google last month
Oh.
as the number one site in the world, which I
Oh.
can, again, no comment. And
Wow. Okay, I did
but
not
they
know
must
that.
be doing something right. And lots of
Oh,
young
yeah.
females on that platform.
Yeah. Yes. Um, but it is, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I've got two kids, and when I look at them and, they're not watching TV in the same way as I did. They're not even really on TV, I mean, YouTube is massive. They've got their favorite YouTubers. And so, yeah, it's not like this sort of this all present sort of channel, the BBC now. It has a lot of competition, and how you sort of get this new young generation to sort of come on board is also
Yeah.
very tricky.
That's the biggest challenge, I think, not only for the BBC, for all the traditional, what we call the linear channel
Mm-hmm.
organizations.
Mm,
Linear meaning, you go by the hour, the minute. The old
yeah.
model of trying to fill the timetable every
Yeah.
minute and then top of the hour, this and that. How many people nowadays? I don't like, even I work in the news industry, I don't have time to fix an hour to say I have to watch the 6 o'clock or
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
o'clock or whatever clock news. I don't have the time. And
Yeah.
I'll only check things, either on streaming services or something when I have the time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
meanwhile, if you look around the world, most people are still devoting huge sums of money because
Mm-hmm.
television is a very expensive business.
Yeah.
And so people are still preoccupied with the linear services as of
Mm-hmm.
now. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, one of the big things maybe will help to push for more content that can engage with women is when more and more biggies start to move digital.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will really then have to look at your data on a daily,
Mm-hmm.
weekly, monthly basis and start to go into the area. Certain programs, once they decentralize, becomes away from the linear model, becomes
Mm-hmm.
more kind of, because digital essentially, it's each program should be able to stand alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you exist in an environment that's forever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
once you're on YouTube or on some other platform, you're there forever. You need to
Mm.
try to be evergreen, try to have some type of a unique selling point, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then you really, if you want to enlarge your footprint, you would try to attract as many audience as possible, not just male audience, and that almost forces people's content creators' hand. You have to move certain way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so yeah, you're feeling positive, so that's good. But yeah, it's true, isn't it? We're all yeah, it has to all fit around very busy lifestyles with as many different devices and multiple kind of choices of where to sort of consume our content. And we're all sort of all on a bit of a content overload as it is.
But you will
But
always make time for the things you care.
yes, yes, yeah, 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 that's
Yeah,
true.
that's another big theme. I sort of start if there's a cause, there's
Mhm,
a item that really speaks to the heart of either young people or women.
mhm,
They will try to find time to engage with content on that type of subject.
mm,
So this whole idea of, again, broadcast, I
mhm,
just do and then I throw out at everybody.
mm,
Eventually, I think that type of business model is gone. It's finished.
yeah,
For
yeah,
people in future to really maintain an audience base, or you really have to then zero down to what you do and
yes,
each piece of content. Maybe you don't need to create 24 hours daily, all those programs,
yeah,
because if nobody's really watching, maybe you should just concentrate those energy and create one or two really good pieces of something
yes,
and
that's true,
engage
yeah, yeah,
targeted audience. And this one piece, I
mhm,
want to engage this group of people, that piece for that. Maybe
mhm,
it's more, but again, that's just thinking, I've been doing rather than.
yes, yeah. Yes, I'm just sorry, I'm getting very distracted by questions coming in.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, no, it's absolutely fascinating. What I have to ask you, what is your favorite BBC content at the moment? What do you like on the BBC?
Uh, I like lots of those digital explainers now,
Mhm,
because even, you know, I work in the news business, but it's really difficult to keep track of everything now.
mhm,
There's so
mhm,
many things happening. So
mm,
what's the deal with Russia and Ukraine? Why
mm,
are they piling up troops and weapons along the border? What
mhm,
exactly? If somebody can create something in 1 minute,
mhm,
gives me this outsider
mhm,
a little idea. What's
mhm,
that? What's that's likely going to impact on me? Or
mm,
will, for example, Boris Johnson go in the next
mm.
48 hours? So what are the key things that may or
Yeah.
may, like, if somebody can timely, this is again just an example of
Mhm,
things people care
mhm,
about. And for example, with all the protests on the Winter Olympics in Beijing,
mm,
do they really matter? If somebody can tell me, are
mm,
there any real impacts on anyone?
mhm,
So
mm,
those are fairly serious topics, simple
mhm.
things. Do I still need the fourth jab to and all these things in
Mhm,
life, I think
mhm.
it depends on who you are. And for younger people, they probably care about, all right, with all this inflation, can I still ever afford to buy my first flat and things?
Yeah,
And then can anybody put that in a
yeah,
really simple way and explain it to me? And so all
yeah.
these things, I'm just thinking that's something I think BBC start to do a lot, which I,
Mhm,
I I quite like that.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I as a sort of final question, we're coming up sort of 50 minutes here. So as a final question, I did ask you last week to give me three inspirational women for you, since we're talking about the female audience, female engagement, female representation. I asked you for three yeah, inspirational women. So could you let us know who these three people are?
Uh, all right. The first one initially I gave was a, female emperor, but actually I'll widen that to uh, you know whether it's Cleopatra
Uh-huh.
or Wu
Uh-huh.
Zetian or all these women back in the olden days when
Uh-huh.
sort of the feudal male-dominated society model was
Mhm.
the model.
Mhm.
They were somehow able to not only survive but
Mhm.
became supreme ruler. handle all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
internal external relations. And when you really think about that, for me that was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And even some of the smartest people,
Hmm.
and if you live in the same time as Mark Antony and Octavius, and you can still somehow manage your way to stay not only alive but manage a huge
Yeah.
empire for decades. And then
Yeah.
that was those were the women I really think that's one type of women who
Yeah.
can survive and make something of. The other
Yeah.
is people who devote themselves to a cause, and
Mm.
I named Marie Curie, and
Yes.
for humanity to eventually understand what those nuclear kind of uranium and
Yes.
things, and she eventually uh, basically committed slow suicide because of
Mm.
exposure to
Mm.
nuclear elements. But
Mhm.
that devotion, and then that's something I also really admire. And the
Mm.
last one I have to say was my paternal grandma, and
Okay.
who I think perhaps represented a day that's gone, bygone days. And
Mhm.
she was born in the dying days of the Manchu dynasty, in the
Mhm.
early 1900s, and then lived
Mm.
through the Civil War, World War II, the communist
Yeah.
takeover, and
Yeah.
then all the struggles and one event after another.
Yeah.
Through the whole process, I think at least my parents' generation will tell me, my uncles and aunts, she basically single-handedly held the family together,
Oh,
even
wow.
when
Yeah.
whether it's poverty, was
Yeah.
famine, was persecution, and
Yeah.
so
Unbelievable.
all done in a very kind of East Asian silent way. No
Okay. Yeah.
complaints. I've never heard
Yeah.
my grandma complain a single
Oh.
time.
Yeah, that reminds me of a book. I don't know if you've heard of it's very famous, The Grapes of Wrath. I know John out there and probably Richard. This is a classic piece of literature. But it's the same. It's this. Well, it's the matriarch, the mother of the family, and they're immigrating from the Dust Bowl to California, trying to get to the orchards to pick the fruit. And yeah, that is a fantastic novel. And when you said that about your grandma, that's immediately what I thought of. Just this extremely strong woman who keeps the family together through some horrific or very tough experiences that we will never know the likes of in our lifetimes. But yeah, that's what it made me think of. So
Yeah,
she sounds.
because now I still, have lessons she taught me. Remember, it was in the early 70s, or
Mhm.
when food and things were still rationed heavily.
Right.
She would teach me, if you have a coupon for meat, go to the
Right.
butcher, only
Uh-huh.
ask for the fattest cut for whatever you can buy. Don't buy lean meat. Get me the fattest cut. And
Uh-huh.
because you can only get it like once a week or once a month, this
Uh-huh.
small slice of
Yeah.
meat. And then she will get the fat, and then get them into sort of lard, and then use the skin to do something else, and the
Uh-huh.
little bit of meat bits at the
Uh-huh.
end. She
Uh-huh.
will, like, every weekend cook something and for you, and then it's just the planning down to the details.
Yeah.
So make sure everybody will taste a little bit of meat once a week,
Oh,
albeit.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Oh, wow. So she's a lady that knows how to survive and how to take care of her clan, so to speak. That's lovely. Right. Well, we're almost coming up to an hour now. So I think we're going to call it there for today. I want to say thank you for everybody also in the chat section who joined us. But yes, I have to say thank you very much to Howard for coming on this live stream today. It's been absolutely fascinating. And you know, the data that you showed us earlier, it's just fascinating to see. But I wish you all the best with you know, in your role, and with this these efforts to you know, build up this female demographic. And yeah, it would be great to stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I will see you again soon. Thanks to everybody out there, and catch you on the next episode. Okay, bye.
Hi.